Israel Keyes is one of the most twisted serial killers you've ever heard of. He was a smart and notorious criminal known for his confidence and his ability to move his victims for long miles without being tracked by law enforcement. He represented everything evil: a serial killer, bank robber, kidnapper, burglar, rapist, necrophile, and arsonist who murdered over 3 victims across the United States. The aggressive sound of his horrible laugh is so infuriating that it will give you goosebumps and creep you out to the fullest. He died by suicide by slashing his wrists, and the evidence left in his jail cell was highly frightening, chilling, and disturbing. Do you want to know what these shreds of evidence are? Also, how did he murder his victims? With that, let's get started. Israel Keyes was born in a sleepy town of Utah on January 7, 1978, to Heidi and John Jeffrey. He was the second child in a family of 10. Keyes lived with his parents and didn't attend any formal schooling because his parents didn't believe in public education. By the late 90s, his parents moved to Oregon, where they registered as members of the Latter-day Christian Church. However, their stay in Oregon was short-lived when they moved to Maine a few years later. Now this is where Keyes' story begins to get interesting. As a child, he was fond of breaking into neighbors' homes and stealing valuables. He also stole guns, and hunting was his favorite sport. His parents observed this strange behavior and tried to caution him. To avoid dealing with his parents' overbearing pressure, Keyes rebelled against them and cut all ties with his father while maintaining a friendship with his mother. Keyes trained in the Army, and this may be one of the places where he got some experience related to military intelligence and captive handline. Keyes served in the Army for a few years before he was discharged in July 2001. In 2007, he started a construction business in Alaska and worked as a handyman, contractor, and construction worker before switching into a sociopath. Keyes is notorious for taking his captives to different locations, and his method was to attack victims who were in a vulnerable location or situation. He stayed in locations where he knew his victims would get little or no help when attacked. Some popular places where he would find his victims included parks, burial grounds, and lonely paths. Aside from meeting his victims in vulnerable positions, Keyes traveled on some occasions to just go and kill people. For example, in 2011, he traveled to Vermont to find a target. One of them was Samantha, and this was the Achilles heel that led to his arrest. February 2, 2012 was a normal day for young Samantha Koenig, who worked at a roadside coffee kiosk to earn a living. But unknown to her, that day would metamorphose into the worst day of her life. As usual, Samantha walked into her small kiosk to do her work. Unfiltered, Israel Keyes, the notorious murderer, had been observing the activities on that premises and was curious to know what happened there. Israel Keyes had observed the coffee kiosk for several weeks, and he decided to go there and see what was happening. For Samantha, however, it was a day of bad luck. Israel Keyes, like most murderers, was highly watchful of time. Keyes liked operating from 7 p.m. and onward when it was getting darker and colder. On that fateful day, Keyes pulled up in front of the kiosk. He looked around and found that most people were still buying coffee inside the kiosk. Keyes waited for a more befitting time later into the night when Samantha was about to close with no customers around. He walked back a distance away from the kiosk to wait for the closing time, and by 7:55 p.m., Keyes walked into the kiosk to meet his now victim, Samantha, alone. He stretched his hand into the window and asked for an Americano, a trick to get Samantha's attention. When the barista stretched out her hand to give him the drink, he removed his gun and showed her to make her feel scared. When she saw the gun, she was nervous and kept moving around inside the kiosk. While he was about to execute his plans, Keyes noticed a man still sitting outside, so he calmed down and asked her to switch off the light. Knowing what was before her, Samantha cooperated. After she switched the lights off, he asked her to give him all she had with her. Samantha did as he requested. As he watched Samantha become increasingly nervous, he checked outside to see if the man in the car park was still there. To his delight, the man had left and he was now alone with Samantha. While searching her desk, he saw a spot with several keys, so he thought Samantha had a car. He asked her, "Where's your car?" To which she responded, "I don't own one." Then he asked if she had alerted the police, to which she answered no. Keyes threatened to kill her if she tried to call the police while letting her know that he had radio scanners. He asked her name, and she told him. Keyes then stuffed some clothes into her mouth and dragged her out. He took her across the road to his truck and began driving away to an unknown location. Keyes had on hand a gun with a silencer, so for Samantha, an attempt to cause a scene would be too risky. Keyes drove Samantha to his house and waited until 2 a.m. before bringing her out. His daughter and wife were inside the house when he brought her in. While at his home, he asked Samantha not to be distressed, assuring her that she was safe. He, however, cautioned her not to attempt calling the police, and if she did, he would kill her before they arrived because he had radio detectors. At this point, Samantha's family was incredibly distressed, but Keyes did one more tricky thing. He took her phone and messaged all the people trying to contact her in a similar voice that you would think you were speaking with Samantha herself. The next day, Israel Keyes had a week-long trip planned and was confused about what to do with his victim. He couldn't leave her behind because he was scared she would alert the cops. So before leaving for his trip, Israel Keyes decided to murder Samantha. After murdering her, Keyes started to loot the victim's savings. Unknown to him, trackers were activated on her ATM card. A few days later, a withdrawal attempt was made in an ATM in faraway Texas, leading to Israel Keyes' arrest and ending his criminal career. He was charged in court with the murder and kidnapping of Samantha by the FBI. In one instance in court, he even attempted to escape. However, on December 2, 2012, Keyes was found dead in his prison cell just a few days before his trial. Authorities say he may have killed himself with a razor mistakenly given to him by prison wardens. The evidence that Israel Keyes left behind in his jail cell includes a suicide note, drawings of 11 skulls, a drawing of the Baphomet, and an inscription of Chorazul in the cell's wall, all written or otherwise stained with Keyes' blood. Even today, nobody knows the meaning behind these messages. There have been varied opinions, such as, it's the siblings, mom, dad, and him. Others said, maybe it's the 12 disciples, with the Baphomet representing Judas. From his drawings, the FBI suspects that Keyes murdered 11 victims in total. Although Keyes admitted to violent crimes as early as 1996, with the aggravated sexual assault of a teenage girl in Oregon, he had a series of meticulous crimes across multiple states that lasted until his capture in 2012. The story of Israel Keyes exemplifies how people can be sheer wicked to one another. What do you think Israel Keyes' skull drawing represent? Tell us in the comment section below. Thank you for watching.